Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Reddit refills. Serious, what was a rule in your household growing up that was actually totally ridiculous? One of the foster homes I lived in had a rule where nobody was allowed in the house unless the adults were home. So sometimes I'd have to sit on the porch from the time school got out, around 2:30 p.m, until like 8 p.m. when the foster parents got home from work. Sometimes even later. Even during winter. My stepmother had a similar rule which only applied to me. I wasn't allowed to be in the house if my father wasn't home. My brother and stepbrothers didn't have to follow any such rule. It really sucked during extreme weather. Evil stepmothers. Totally a thing. My stepmother had my brothers and I written out of my dad's will, while leaving her 2 kids in the will. I also had a dinner conversation where she explained that they would not be helping me pay for college. At that same dinner she wrote a check to pay for my stepsister's college tuition. We were not allowed to talk during dinner. My dad just wanted to focus on eating. Aren't families talking during dinner was considered a good thing? I'm referring to parents being involved into their kids' lives. Edit. In case I wasn't clear. I was making reference to the fact that families engaging in conversation, not just during dinner, was a good thing and should be encouraged. If you farted out loud, you were grounded to the bathroom until you could poop. I thought thus was pretty normal until a friend of mine was over and questioned it. The duck? This one is the one that made me laugh my ass off. This is weird as duck. Especially for company you have over. My dad's big rule was don't bleed on the rug. It was obviously just a way to de-escalate the bangs and bumps of kids horsing around. He would hear a smash from the other room. Then silence. Then call out just don't bleed on the rug. One time my brother cut himself. He was pretty young. Maybe 7 or 8 and my dad came in with wide eyes and said you bled on the rug. Bleeding brother didn't get the dad joke and thought his life was completely over. Started crying hysterically. De-escalation backfired after years of build-up. I enjoy this one. Because there's a lot of ducked up rules in this thread. And it was nice to come across this one and laugh. This is adorable. No drinks at the dinner table. This was a rule in my grandma's house. We could only have beverages after we finished all of our dinner. It was terrible. Because grandma's food was always super salty. Eventually, I just stopped eating dinner whenever we went to grandma's. Apparently, it was acceptable to skip the meal by saying that you weren't hungry. But having some water or milk with dinner? Never. Then I'd binge eat when I went home because it was 9 p.m. by them and I would be starving. Same. But my grandmas, both, always over-peppered their meals. I used to pretend to get something in the fridge to lick off a little butter for reprieve. I remember watching a movie where a waiter suggested certain wines with a meal and I was pissed. You mean adults have been getting away with drinking while they ate this whole time? My grandma also has a problem with reading or doing work while you eat because you wind up eating the words instead of learning. My mum would make gigantic portions. That is, 4 times the size of a regular meal and force us to eat every bite. We'd often feel sick afterwards, which was great because that's when we had to do our chores. Later found out that she had an eating disorder and gave us quadruple portions so she didn't feel bad for eating a regular sized meal. Edit. No. I'm not fat. That sounds like child abuse. How old were you when you found out she was doing it because of an eating disorder? About 19 or 20. Not our house. But in my grandma's house. No whistling. If you whistled, you were calling for the devil to come. Got to add a whistle to my shopping list along with nightshade, bat bones, and pencil lead. Us Russians have a saying that if you whistle indoors you'll whistle all your money away. Even now sitting by myself in my apartment trying to whistle feels discomforting. We were never allowed to be alone. We had to be in our parents' eye line at all times. And we weren't allowed to go to the bathroom without asking permission. Even when I was 18. I can't even imagine the reasoning behind needing to ask permission to use the bathroom. What did they expect you to do at night? Wake them up to ask? We didn't have to ask at night. It was just a control thing. They wanted to control every aspect of our lives. They were more our taskmasters than anything else and we had to do everything on their time. We weren't allowed to be in our own bedrooms except for at bedtime. We were never allowed to close doors. Zero privacy. If we were at someone else's house we had to call and check in every hour. And then on top of that there was lots of physical and emotional abuse. The funny thing they think they were great parents and expect us to take care of them when they're old. That's not happening. They're just bad people and utterly delusional. We all turned out pretty good though. Everyone had to go to bed when mom felt sleepy. And she often felt sleepy at 7 PM. Also, no TV cartoons. My dad had the same rule that everyone had to go to bed before he did. He and I both have bad problems sleeping so I can see his point that he wouldn't want me running around making noise. No phone calls. Ever. We could not call anyone and no one could call us. Not even another kid's parent to say they would be late for couple or whatever. Phone calls from your boss at work? Nope. Work wants you to come early? No. You cannot talk to them. Don't call again. Then why have a phone? Penguin transport. Please call an ambulance. I'm having a heart attack. Sorry. Can't do that. You told me never to call anyone. We weren't allowed to hang posters on the wall. Even with a nice poster tack stuff that doesn't leave any marks. My parents were obsessed with preserving the resale value of the house. I had the girl room and my brother had the boy room. My room was painted pink, a color I never liked as a kid. Even when I was very young, and my brother's was baseball themed. Brother could have framed baseball posters if my mom approved them. I was only allowed Monet's water lilies, also framed, because it was the only art my mom liked that went with the pink color theme. They've lived in that house for almost 30 years and have no intention of ever moving. Bro. What is the point of owning your own home if you don't make it your own? If you don't make it your own, don't you see? They did make it their own home. By preventing the daughter from making it her own. It stayed exactly as the mother wanted it. How strict and often I would get grounded. Grounded at my house meant something different than what other people's grounded meant. When I got grounded I could do absolutely nothing. Wake up. Got sit at the kitchen table. Read a pre-chosen book all day that I had no interest in. Go to bed. I was once grounded for 6 months because of a D. Also the insane amount of yard work I was made to do. Every weekend was yard work from morning until night. Then back to forced reading until bed. My brother once got grounded and he had to write out the whole Bible. He left the house before he ever finished. Also I once got grounded because my stepmom thought I was worshipping Satan because she found my Diablo II strategy guide. I then had to throw away all of my CDs and the book and game. Oh god, I got a punishment similar to this once when I was about 11. Me and my brother had to be a pair of bookends for about 3 days. That entailed being woken up at 6 am. After getting dressed. Putting school uniform on and having breakfast, all in silence. We had to sit on opposite ends of a sofa in silence until school. School happens. Get back from school and get sat at the dinner table to do homework. Then return to sitting on the sofa in silence until bedtime at about 10 PM, with a break for dinner. Also taken in silence. Sofa time was spent doing nothing. No books. No TV. No sleeping. Only allowed to get up for toilet breaks. That one lasted for 3 days. Another weird punishment I got when I was 14 was after getting back from visiting my biological dad. My stepdad, now ex-stepdad. Mum left him, got really pissy at me for staying up late at my dad's and how tired I looked, so he forced me to stay up with him while he was in the lounge watching TV. I was sat in a corner where I couldn't see the TV. Told to sit up straight and was not allowed to slouch or close my eyes. Was kept up until about 2 to 3 am. This was on a school night as well. He was the one that gave me the aforementioned bookend treatment as well. Were your parents CIA interrogators? These are legit techniques that are used. Only thing you apparently missed out on was sensory deprivation and waterboarding. Whenever my dad came home from work, my sister and I had to go in our rooms for the rest of the day, except for when we needed to use the bathroom or eat dinner. Because my dad would need to relax and couldn't do that with his children around. Even just sitting on the couch reading a book or playing quietly with toys bothered him too much and would make him yell at us to leave. Childhood. We had to be quiet when we drove through Chicago because Oprah was filming there. I'm guessing it was because I was being too noisy or my parents were trying to concentrate on the directions. But I can't believe I bought into that for years. So you know how when you don't like the taste of something as a child you start gagging? Well, my mom's rule was if you gagged and threw up, you had to eat the throw up. I'll never forget her shoving thrown up boiled Brussels sprouts covered in stomach bile down my throat because I couldn't keep them down at dinner. Oh my god. This is sick. Your mom is sick. That is literally a chapter in the book A Child Called It. This guy who was severely abused as a child wrote his memoirs. And that's something his mom did to him at one point. Made him eat his own puke. Your mom was a crazy byak. It wasn't the rule itself that was ridiculous. It was the fact that it was the only rule. Don't set the house on fire. That was it. I could do whatever the duck I wanted as long as the house wasn't a pile of ashes when my parents got home. Flood the ducker. Well shit. At least insurance would have covered a fire. For me, it was that Disney films were almost completely banned. I was allowed to watch Mickey Mouse. My mum felt that they were too saccharine and that I should not be lied to about the future. We actually all sat down as a family when I was about 5 to watch Mulan. Then read the poem while my mum explained the differences. Joke's on her though. I watched Pocahontas at a sleepover. Although this does mean that I have not seen The Lion King, Cinderella, etc. There were crazier ones, but the rule of no eating after 4 PM, as it might ruin our dinner, was the most annoying. Unfortunately, we didn't get home from school until after 4, so whatever paltry sum of food from the school cafeteria was going to have to be fine until 7 PM. Because that's when dad liked to have dinner. I'd get headaches a lot when I was hungry, so I usually had a headache most of the day. What's really funny is that each of us 3 kids had mentioned to our mother independently as adults that it was a crazy rule not getting to eat after school, and she denied having such a strict enforcement to each of us. Adults usually forget the little things that scar us. Like how you forced your children to starve. Yup. My mom beat me once when I was 9. The next day, she sees my scars and bruises and says, "Who did that?" I told her she did. And she repeatedly denied it, citing a lack of memory. Like, dude. Seriously? Don't talk to dad and mom. I always thought that TV shows were making it up that there were parents who talked to their kids without yelling and cussing. They used to tell me there were no such families. It was all just TV. We weren't allowed to play video games during the school year, so the NES N64 were nicely boxed and stored 9 months each year. However, we could watch TV all day long without a problem. I can't play Mario, but I can watch telenovelas. Awesome. I got my Xbox taken away from me in 8th grade thanks to my horribly mediocre grades. Of course. Mom and dad seemed to think they didn't have to lock it up or anything. Games and console just sat in a box in their room. They go out to eat or something. Game time. As soon as they'd pull in, I'd yank the cables and throw everything back in the box. If they knew. They never said anything. When my older brother was growing up until he turned about 14, he was never allowed to wear black t-shirts. That was probably when my mother was at her most super Christian stage and thought that the color black was satanic. Of course she doesn't care anymore. She's honestly a wonderful mother and we all laugh about it now as adults. Edit. People keep mentioning priests wearing black. Where we live in Australia, the priests here don't wear black. Instead, just a button up and shorts. LMAO. I was the only one in the house not allowed to wear black. I was really depressed at 13 and my parents said I could only wear happy colors. Looking back, I understand why they did it. But I think my bro and sis should have had the same rule as well. But this was also the mother who chained the fridge shut when my sister was overweight instead of, you know, talking to her and helping. Bah. My mom was also super Christian. And one time when I was about 14, she told me to take off the pretty red nail polish I was so proud of that I had just put on because only prostitutes wear red nail polish. I bet our moms would have gotten along. I had a 10 PM bedtime from age 16 until I moved out. I turned 18 in July and moved out in August. The only exception was if I had work. I got grounded for a week because I was up reading. 5 years later my then 13-year-old sister came home falling down drunk around midnight. My mom was mad but my dad just laughed. No punishment. Being the oldest sucked sometimes. Yeah, I'm the oldest too and my parents' leniency with their children definitely changed over the years. In 4th grade I got upset with my mother and called her a bitch and I lost my PlayStation for a month. Rightfully so. My youngest brother now has verbally assaulted every member of my family with countless vulgarities and has, to this day, yet to see a real punishment. One of my personal favorites was when he screamed he was going to ducking kill you for being such a ducking bitch. Dumbus, directed at my mother, he really learned his lesson from a 10-minute timeout. Yeah. I have something similar. My younger sister, by a year and a half, is exempt from every rule my parents set up because she has anger issues and they want to avoid trouble. She came home pissed drunk one night, she's 16, and my parents did nothing. I came home an hour after curfew because of car trouble. And I'm not allowed to leave the house for anything but school and church for 3 months. It's infuriating. Everyone has to put an ornament on the tree or else the house will blow up. I love my father. What kind of vaccine schedule did you get at 18? I'm in the same boat right now. I am turning 18 in a few weeks and have never received a vaccine. I am going to go talk to my doctor of course. But I'm curious as to how you went about being vaccinated. My mom went through a nutrition thing with me when I was about 9. Not to your extent. But it was still pretty bad. She decided I ate too much junk food, really. I ate a normal amount for a kid, and she stuck me on a cleanse. Though she told me that I had developed a bunch of allergies. It's important to note my sister, who had the same every habit as me, did not have to do this cleanse. For 2 years I was not allowed to eat wheat, dairy, sugar, peanuts, or tomatoes. Instead of sandwiches for school I got rice cakes. Instead of treats I had to have sugar-free pieces of cardboard. I ended up just not eating and lost a ridiculous amount of weight. Whenever I visited my dad he'd make the best giant sandwiches, smoothies, milkshakes, and we'd have taco nights because they were my favorite food as a kid. I can't imagine how heartbroken he must have felt when he had to send me back to my mom's. I look at pictures from back then and feel sick. I look like a skeleton. She still talks about that time like she was super mom and it drives me bonkers. She did a lot of terrible things a mother shouldn't do. But I think that one was the worst. This is so strange to me because I was never allowed to wear any makeup at all when I lived at home, for religious reasons. I would sneak mascara to school and put it on, then take it off before going home. I also wasn't allowed to wear my hair down, had to be braided in a ponytail, any jewelry, or pants. What the hell is wrong with pants? Father gave my mother a cordless phone for Christmas. When using it, we had to sit next to the wall socket, not walk around, because its cordless advantages were her gift and her benefit only. That sounds like dad trolling. We weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob because apparently SpongeBob was the devil. My parents were ridiculously strict Catholics. I still don't see how they could think negatively about the Charmed Striped Sweater song and Gary the Snail. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Satan. That's who. We weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob either. Not for moral issues or anything. My parents just thought it was the most annoying show on the planet. We had to ask before we started playing with a new toy. And we didn't usually get to play with more than one type of toy at a time. For example, we couldn't play with Legos and Barbies at the same time. I think this is the strangest one here. That sounds like an awful experience. Living with your mother sounds like a nightmare. I'm glad you don't have to deal with that anymore. But how did you manage to get out of there? If you don't mind my asking? Luckily for me when I applied to uni I told her my first choice uni was the one in our town. She left me alone about my choices. But I had applied to a different one as my first choice and was an even before I did my O-levels. I sorted everything out I could on my own. Applied for everything I needed then on results day. Told her I got into a different uni. I got in with my GCSE scores and my extracurricular activities. The week before I left, my mum was pulling all sorts of crap, saying I can have a car if I stayed with her. When that didn't work, she was told me she might as well kill herself. I felt so awful about leaving that I mentioned it at work on my last day, and one of the women there told me her mum pulled the same crap and she never left. She said it was the worst decision she ever made and told me to get out while I had the chance. Mum drove me up to uni. Had quite a few massive fits of rage on the drive down, making it awful. She refused to talk to any of the parents as we were all moving in, as they all happily chatted with each other about how exciting everything was. Eventually she left after the drama with the bed sheets and I was finally free. She then pretended to be dead for a few months, missing my birthday. I wasn't allowed to bring my boyfriend upstairs when I was in high school, but I was allowed to bring him to our fully finished basement with a relatively soundproof door, including a bedroom. Maybe my parents figured we were going to have sex anyways, so send us to the part of the house where they couldn't hear it. I got grounded one time, and my punishment was I had to wear V-neck shirts to school. I didn't understand why. I was about 10 years old, and my dad said, "You'll see why." Which I now understand to mean that his intent was for me to be ostracized by appearing gay. Jokes on him, because 16 years later, V-necks are in and being gay is totally cool. There was a kid at my high school that always wore V-necks. He was totally straight, but he rocked that look. I was always a bit jealous of his fashion sense. Your father tried to punish his tenure by bringing down to him the ostracizing prejudice of being homosexual? He sounds great. I wasn't allowed to trick or treat. I wasn't either. Because of Satan. You can't have a friend spend the night because you're a lesbian and you'll rape them and then their parents will sue me. My grandmother is a dunt. We weren't allowed to say what. I'm not joking. My mother would lash out if we said it. She was pretty weird. Are you sure it was your mother and not Samuel L. Jackson? r/Ray said Gilles Winfield. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.